Yes, guys, what's up? Speci here, and we have the patch notes. It is patch day today, and we're looking through the patch notes. We've got Twitch chat with us. They're going to be saying W or L for each of the cards. Let's get straight onto it, because there's quite a lot to get through. We're only a month away from the expansion. Now, over 50% of the people that watch my videos aren't subscribed, so check if you're subscribed, and please consider subscribing. It would be very kind of you to do so. 8.5 is bringing a new journey. It's Triss. Wow, didn't see that one coming. So pretty excited to see if we get any changes to Triss. Of course, the art was leaked a few days ago. 8.5 has focused on 3 goals, making weaker stratagems stronger. Now, if you haven't seen the video I did with Saber, Saber is a professional Gwent player. That will be in the description. We've already gone through quite a few of the changes, so I'm not going to go over the ones that Saber and I talked about in that video. We're just going to be picking out those ones from in the patch notes that weren't in the developer stream from a week ago. So if you haven't already seen that, it's probably a good starting place. It's like a 45-minute long video where we talked about all the stratagems. Buffing some less popular leaders, making them more versatile, that's a great thing, and balancing some new cards released in the 8.3 update. Alright, let's have a gander. So all these stratagems we've talked about quite a bit, and the armory as well is one we've seen. Now this is a new change. Regis has had his provisions change from 13 to 12. So Regis still has that initiative. Chat, don't forget, let us know, is this a W or is this an L? This is the first one we're talking about. Regis having his provisions changed. It does mean one thing. It's actually a buff to Alza, right? With a Neuromancy, not being able to pull Regis. So it's actually a buff to Alza. Regis was like the worst card. Obviously, old Spear Tip used to be 13 and be able to pull it off a Neuromancy and Alza, but that is no longer a thing. So it doesn't really seem like anyone's going to be playing Regis just because of this provision change. The initiative is a bit of a downer. Land of 1,000 Fables we talked about. Operator is a new one. Provisions change from 8 to 7. Now Ace of Plays I know is going to be very, very happy about this one. I love this change. I think Operator is a card that you can build quite a lot of decks around. Mill being a big one, of course, but there's other things you might be able to do with Operator as well. Seditious Aristocrats can be a thing. Centurion Royal Guards. Obviously, you've got that Darren synergy as well. So I think this is a really, really cool one that I'm looking forward to trying out. I'm sure there's lots of ideas you guys have got that I've not even mentioned. Maybe Queen's Guard, All-In Spies, all sorts of things like that. Definitely excited for this Operator change. I think this is one of the biggest ones from this patch note so far. 7 provisions is a nice sort of number for a tech card that you can build a deck around. I like it. Armorer's Workshop. Armor changed. What the heck is Armorer's Workshop? I have got Gwent open, ready to go. Workshop. Armor change from 1 to 2. Boost 3 adjacent units by 2 and give them 1 armor. So it's now going to be giving 2 armor. I actually thought about using this card at one point in a deck. I can't remember what the deck was, though. I don't think... It's still not going to be seeing much play, but just imagine you could play this on Azar Defenders, right? You play Azar with Scarabs, and then you go Armorer's Workshop, and it's more difficult to kill. I mean, it's not going to see any play in my opinion, but it's an improvement maybe to like a Bandit archetype and stuff like that, so I'm all down. Traveling Merchant, power changed from 4 to 5. Merchant is the one that swaps the cards. Oh, it shuffles card from your hand into the deck, draw a card. Okay, I mean, honestly, like 5 for 5 that is a shuffle. It's not bad. Like, I don't think it's going to see much play at all, but in some very, very combo heavy specific decks. Fisher King, of course. You could play Fisher King and put a card on top of your deck. You could go Traveling Merchant. I mean, it's a helpful buff. Is it going to see play? Probably not. This one, Wagenberg. Provisions change from 5 to 4. This is a card I really actually like seeing go to 4 provisions, because it's like the center of a full all-in armor deck, right? We've just seen that Armorer's Workshop card getting changed, but this being at 4p, that's pretty cool. It's a siege engine as well, so some siege synergy maybe there. Of course, it's giving out armor, so it could be played in dwarfs maybe. I know we saw Tailbot playing like an all-in bandit deck a long time ago. You've got Iris Dracoturtle, Living Armor recently got buffed. So Wagenberg, definitely one I'm looking forward to being usable in the next patch. That's a really nice one. And this is huge. Iris's Shade. Provisions change from 10 to 9. So a point buff on Iris Shade. You can now renew this card. You can now play it in a Nova deck. Unfortunately, the main target for this is going to be the Draco Turtle, but this is a card we saw Magpie play in competitive decks barely a year ago in combination with the Turtle, and seeing all these other armor changes, this looks like a really, really cool card. Like, this card is really nice on Draco Turtle. It's a big point slam because, of course, you remove the armor from the Turtle, you gain it all in points, but then the Turtle as well is going to be buffing itself for every point of armor lost. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to see Iris Shade and armor being pushed. Love that. Okay, Iris Companions. The Iris Companions is the draw and discard a random card. It's been in the game for a really long time. It's a bit of an iconic beta card, and it's being changed. Draw a card of your choice, then discard a random card. Exactly the same. However, if you have Iris in hand, choose which card to discard instead. Wow. That is a really good card. So you're tutoring any card from your deck for 5 points. And you get to choose what you discard. So you imagine you play this in a Coral deck. Somebody's mentioned, Dumdy's mentioned. You imagine you play this in discard Skellige. You can tutor any card. Bear in mind, Iris's Shade has just been buffed as well, right? And you've got the Iris's Shade in hand. Then, bang, happy days. That's a really, really powerful ability. 5 points to tutor any card and choose what you can discard. You could discard Mortvarg, a Berserker. That's a really, really powerful ability. Now, the other Iris card, I believe there's only one, is still quite lackluster despite getting buffed last patch. It is just a 5.6 provision card that gives vitality. This card is not going to see play at all. I would still love to see this get like a little bit of Purify, maybe like a bit of a Peller on steroids. I think it needs some sort of secondary ability because even in Nature's Gift, this card doesn't see play when vitality is so important. If you compare it, in fact, to this Scoia'tael Enchantress, I do believe it's called, the Dryad Enchantress, it's very similar, but it's 2 provisions more for like 2 more points, and this card doesn't even see play, right? And it doesn't break Devotion, and it has the ability to give armor. So this Iris card's still going to need a little bit more love. I would love to see this card get a little bit of Purify action or something to that extent, but that's a really, really cool change to look out for. I could really see this card seeing play in some niche decks, and that's all you need for a neutral card, right? You just need some niche decks where it really fits the bill, and that seems to do it. And Wagenberg, Iris's Shade, even Armor's Workshop I could see being decent, honestly. And with Wagenberg, really excited to try out some neutral Skellige decks with the discard package and Iris for sure. Big change, one of the few dragons in the game, the forgotten dragon in many ways. People remember Keltalis, they remember Villain Tretamurth, Synthesis, but Mitchabrak is often forgotten about. A card that used to see a lot of play in some Northern Realms Adder decks and Cursed decks, and apparently I don't know how to spell it. Here we go. I also don't know how to pronounce it. Currently it's just damaging 2 enemy units by 2. But come tomorrow, or come today as you're watching this video, it's now 5 power, 7 provisions. That's a huge buff to this card. Love to see that. 5 power, just 7 provisions. Could definitely be seeing play in some Revenant decks. If we just compare like this to some other 7 provision neutral cards, let's have a little gander that are units as well. Let's search by that. Like, a lot of these cards are decent, but just don't quite see play. Like, I've actually played a lot of these cards recently. Leo is a great card. The Witcher Trio sees some niche play. Siegfried, Vladimir, honestly, all these cards can see some niche play. I've even played Lady of the Lake recently. Fisher King's not too far off in some certain specific decks. Yeah, to see like Iris Companions get buffed, also this dragon here getting buffed is great to see. Like, a lot of these neutral cards aren't that far away. I wonder if even you could build an Ike deck. I've always been a big fan of Ike around this dragon buff. This is a really, really nice buff. I could see this seeing some play in some Northern Realms Revenants already. I've got my eyes on a Mitchabrak, Ike, and Villain Tretamurth deck coming in a few days. All right, so up next, we've done the neutrals. Monsters is the first faction. Detlef, Unseen, Archspore, Foglet are all changes we've already seen. Now, Ancient Foglet is one that Malegion, who is a developer for Gwent, reached out to me and actually said I got a little bit wrong. So basically, it's now 4 power, 6 provisions. and its ability is boosting self by the total duration of row effects on the opposite side of the board, not the opposite row. So let's say you've got Ardgaith down, you play Ardgaith, and the next turn you play this Ancient Foglet. Your Ancient Foglet is going to be boosted by 4 points because there's going to be 2 weather ticks on the front, on the melee, 2 weather ticks on the ranged. So your Ancient Foglet will just come in at a solid 8 points. And then whenever you apply a row effect, boost self by its duration. So row effect includes Crimson Curse, Dettlaff. It includes Frost and Fog. Really looking forward to playing some fog, some weather stuff. Weather just looks beautiful. An Ancient Foglet looks like it could be a driving force, mid-range provision. Magic as well, Cataclysm of course, yes. All sorts of synergies there with Ancient Foglet. I am looking forward to experimenting with. Anything that says weather means Magic as well, as Kate has pointed out. So yeah. Cyclops is not restricted to the melee row anymore. I just know this is one that people in my chat are excited for because Cyclops is a card that gets thrown around to me. So especially if you use Cyclops, it's removal. Yeah, Cyclops is a pretty good card now, I would say. There's some really nice Succubus synergy there now, right? You could just play a Maruna. Sorry, you can play your Cyclops onto a Succubus, even if it spawns in the back row, and just remove something. Obviously, if you've got like a 7 strength unit, a 6 strength unit, a 5, you can now just choose whatever you need for the perfect removal. Looking forward to trying out Cyclops now. This is a really nice change, for sure. Maruna is now 5 power. That's a really nice change. Of course, a big change that we mentioned in the last video is this change to the stratagem of monsters, which is actually still down here. Urn of Shadows. You can use Urn of Shadows on gold cards. So Succubus being 5 power. Sorry, Maruna being 5 power. Huge. Succubus has got the relic tag. I don't think that does anything. I don't think there's any relic synergies as of yet in Gwent. Do please correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe there is. I don't think there is. Is how you spell relic? Wow, that's such a weird spelling. No relic synergies apart from Doppler. Doppler has some relic synergies, I guess. That's pretty cool. Okay, and Eridin is now 6 power. We saw that one. Right, up next, Reckless Furrow being changed is great. Oscar Rubros is a nice change too. Coral, definitely looking forward to some discard stuff. Dire Bear Uridan, Iced Bloodthirst 3, still a really good card. Crack is the order to damage a unit by 1 each turn. Really looking forward to trying that. All these again were from the last video. Armor Up for Provisions is a great change. Totem is now a location and therefore has resilience. That's pretty cool. Alright, these are the new ones. Bear Witcher Quartermaster now has Zeal. Wait, that's really flipping good. Yeah, this card's really good. So this card just plays for 8 points if you can hit like armor, right, with the damage, or if you can hit like your totem, or you're gonna heal. This card is really good now. Wow. I'm already with the change to armor up as well. I'm already looking to do this. I'm already looking at this card. Vesemir Mentor in Skellige is starting to look like it makes more sense. That is a really nice change. Also a big buff to Kadooch. That's actually a massive buff to Kadooch, actually. Because a lot of the time with Kadooch, you're forced to hold on to it until you've got 4 cards left with Bear Witchers. Because your Quartermaster is just going to die in a lot of matchups. Like if you're playing against like a Precision Strike deck, you know it's going to get rebuked, you're going to lose value. Well, now you just know you've got that deploy value off of Kadooch at 8 points if you've got armor to hit or whatever, right? That's a really cool change to the Quartermaster. Love that. Terra Crew Plunderer. Power change from 2 to 3. What is that? Is it the 4P card? Terra Crew Plunderer. So it's changing from what? 2 to 3 power, is that right? Yeah, it's changing from 2 to 3 power. So big buff. Like 1 power at 4 provisions is a big deal. So this damages an enemy unit by 2, and if it's it damages a unit by 2 if it's an ally boosts itself by 4. So if you just damage a unit by 2, it's 5 points with 1 armor. That's pretty bad. But if you damage an ally, it's 7 points. If the damage hits armor, for example, that's pretty decent. 7 for 4 if you've got the synergy. And obviously there's things like healing in Skellige. There's self-wounding archetypes. That seems like a really nice buff, actually. And the Axe Wielder as well, going from 2 to 3. So this is the Axe Wielder. Deploy, damage enemy unit by 2. Expose, damage a random enemy unit by 2. So this is just going to be 5 points with 2 armor, with no synergy. But if you can remove the armor, it's going to be 7 points. Now, these cards are probably aimed at Crack on Crate with the fact that they have armor, particularly this one, right? And obviously, like, Crack is giving things armor as well, and they're pirates as well, of course. So pirate buffs. Yeah, okay, that's a big point, the fact they're pirates. Do you know what? Yeah, I played against a pirate deck on Pro Ladder earlier this week, and I was actually really impressed by it. Using cards like Terror of the Seas, Crack on Crate, of course. I think it had Lippy in there. All right, I'm all ears. I still think, unfortunately, the big problem that Skellige has is that Devotion, Blaze of Glory Warriors is just going to be, it's just going to be better because Iced exists and Scoia'tael exists and Herald exists. And is it going to be enough to promote a competitive deck? Probably not, in my opinion, but who knows. Herald Houndsnout has been buffed from 9 to 8. That's a massive change. Herald Houndsnout is a card that was a bit of a staple in Skellige for a long time and has a lot of nice synergies. He's unfortunately not a pirate or anything like that. He is just a human. He's not a warrior, so he is just a general, you know, doesn't shoehorn his way into any deck. But in Ursine Ritual decks, he's great because you can use your leader charges on him. He's also got some really nice Idaran synergy, for example, because you could spawn an extra one of these skulls, right? Harold's Pal. He also has really nice synergy with Svalbard Priest, so you could even use him in like a priest deck with the scenario and things like that. A really, really flexible card. Obviously, Quartermaster now gaining Zeal. Seems like a really nice option for Harold. I could see Harold being a card that is considered in quite a lot of competitive decks at 8 provisions. He was a little bit power crept. I think this is actually a really nice change, in my opinion. Looking forward to trying that. So, yeah, overall, like, so far, the changes to the neutral cards that are new, I really like the fact they're pushing armor. Okay, maybe not all of them super relevant. I also really like this change to the dragon. And then the monster changes, like Maruna and Cyclops changes, are pretty nice. They're the new ones. But Skellige, the ones that really jump out, are the Quartermaster change and the Houndsnout change. But really, really like that they're pushing sort of armor as well. Let's not forget Pirates armor with Iris Shade and these sorts of things could be pretty cool because armor is points in SK, right? Turtle, you've got the Wagenberg now as well. And yeah, the Maruna change, I kind of agree. Like, that's a big buff. Like, 5 power is a big deal. 1 power buff is a big deal. If the provisions don't change. Okay, NR. Pincer Maneuver, Foltest, Queen Meave, Poor Fucking Infantry. We've seen all these changes. Lyrian Arbalist, power change from 3 to 4. Okay, now personally I would like to have seen this just go to 4 provisions. I can see why they didn't want to do that because it is quite a scary card that could become auto-include quite easily. Arbalist, 3 to 4. Is this card going to see play? Yeah, it's definitely an improvement. It's a buff to charge decks. The big problem with 5 provision engines is you kind of just inherently want to play engines at 4 provisions because if they die to 4 provision removal, you don't lose anything. Like, let's say this Arbalist gets hit by a D-bomb and Maddox comes out. That's 3 tempo more that your opponent has on you already. But obviously with cards like in decks like Stockpile, this is an essential card. So for this to get buffed is nice. I still think it would have maybe made more sense to make it 4 provisions and 3 power, but I guess they probably tested it and decided it was just going to be a little bit too good. But yeah, pretty uninspiring change, and I'm pretty upset to see there's only one more change here that's new for NR. That's really disappointing, not going to lie. And that is Siege Tower. Vitality and boost change from 3 to 4. Okay, Siege Tower. I mean, it's not bad, honestly. Like, this is just going to be gaining 4... Is the crew going to change, or is the crew the same? Crew and boost. Okay. So this is now... It's an extra point, right? It's an 8 for 5. That's pretty decent, actually. That's quite a nice change. I like this change. It's actually not a bad card at all now. I could definitely... I would say it's a card that if you look at the 5 provision siege engines in NR, if you're looking to play siege, you probably pick this one now over, for example, Cara Ballistas and Reinforced Ballistas. Yeah, I mean, obviously, like, don't get me wrong, like, this poor fucking infantry change, the Meave change, the Foltest change, the Pincer Maneuver, and the Inspired Zeal Changer, all great. I was just hoping for a little bit more juice with a few of these cards. But I hope we'll have to wait and see what happens next. Oak getting buffed. I'm gonna skip through the leader changes because we've seen a lot of these already. But the Great Oak power changed from 7 to 8. Wow. Much needed, because Oak has just been a little bit power crept. Obviously, the introduction of Gezras, they're quite similar cards in the way that they benefit from row stacking. Gezras obviously just has an engine, whereas Oak is point slam. But great to see Oak getting a point buff. And a point buff at 13 provisions is a really big deal. So really excited to see Oak, hopefully seeing some more play. Obviously, it was a big card in the Harmony days. Hasn't been seeing as much play in like Nature's Gift decks. People just tend to go for Gezras more often. But a good friend of mine, Bantonio, has had a lot of success with Gaitan and trying to avoid engines in Nature's Gift. And maybe the Great Oak now getting an extra point could go a long way. Monroe, we've seen. Vanguard, power change from 1 to 2. So I believe the Vanguard is the card that boosts for all the elves, right? I do believe. And 1 point buff is quite nice for this card. Yeah, boost self by 1 for each elf in your hand. So it's the card that's quite similar to Safecrackers, right? Except Safecrackers have 2 more base power and you can tutor them through Justice. So probably could have seen an extra point on this card. I don't think it's going to see much play. Generally speaking, you don't want to go all in on elves because there's quite a lot of bad elf cards. And normally, like your swarm elf cards, your swarm elves such as Venusiel and the Scenario and Isengrim, you just play in like a shorter round, right? You don't normally play elves all 3 rounds because there's quite a lot of bad elves. But having said that, Neophyte getting buffed, you know, like this card's not bad. I just don't really think there's enough good elves to justify playing this card. Like a lot of these elves are pretty bad, right? Like Venusiel, great. Eldain, great, but you would never want to play Vanguard in Eldain because you're going to have a handful of traps. You really would want to go all in on elves. So cards like Elias, like Malane's just power crept. You don't want Shura in hand. You never want Ailerin in hand. Isengrim, sure. Yavin, sure. But a lot of these other cards are just a little bit lackluster. So I don't think this is going to be a big change. Catwitcher Adept, power change from 3 to 4. That's a really nice change. Catwitcher Adept is one of those cards that has just not seen a single bit of play since it was released in the Master Mirror. Sorry, in the Way of the Witcher expansion. Let's just do this. I actually played it a little bit myself in a Harmony deck. And it is a shoehorn in Harmony. If you're playing Harmony, I would suggest that you play 2 of these because it's a cheap way of getting the Witcher tag. The only other ways are normally like a little bit more expensive. There's a few in at 5 provision. But obviously like Harmony, you kind of row stack. Yeah, this card just got a lot better. 1 power at 4 provisions is absolutely huge. I could see this card seeing a lot of play. Certainly if you're going for like a Redea deck, which you could definitely do in Scoia'tael. Yeah, this card just seems pretty good to me, actually. Yeah, and also Vanguard, you mentioned could be good in Redea Elves. Yeah, I can see it. Like, this card just looks actually pretty good now. It's got an extra point. It takes a little while to set up, but it's good against decks that go wide. But most of the time, you're going to want to use the ranged ability, right? And it does count itself, bear in mind, right? So if you've got 2 cards in the back row, like let's say you start off with a half-elf hunter or oak critters, for example, and you play 2 cards in the back row, and then you play this card, it's going to be 4 power, and there's going to be 3 cards in the row, so you would give 3 vitality. So it's just going to be a nice 7 for 4. So at that point, you could compare it already to the Dryad's Enchantress. But remember, vitality also has some really nice synergy with Hammer Dryads, things like that. So that's a really big change, I would say. I would say look out for this card. Seeing play in a lot more Scoia'tael decks. Scoia'tael just has so many good 4s, and this is what I'm saying, like, if this card existed in Northern Realms, it would probably be in every Northern Realms deck. Northern Realms 4 provision cards are just so bad, and that's why I was probably a little bit sad to see Arbalest not being changed to 4P, and not seeing any of these, like, cards. Like, Poor Funky Infantry is nice, but, like, some sort of, like, other card at 4P. This is a nice change, admittedly, as a 4P card in NR. Anyway, Nilfgaard, Morvenverus, Lockdown, Formation, Damien, Stefan, Bremdi, Vrigath, we've all seen. Vivian has gone from 3 to 4. So Vivian, I believe, is the one that boosts by provision or sets to provision, right? Viv. Yeah, so she's 3 to 4. She's an aristocrat. That's pretty relevant, right? Of course, Masquerade Ball not working with spies anymore. Vivian being an aristocrat and getting buffed is very relevant. There's also some nice synergies you can do with this card, I'm sure. With like Vernon, with Roach used to be a big one. Not Vernon Roach, just Roach. But of course, Roach is only 9 provisions now, so there's a few things I'm sure you could do with this. I'm not massively experienced with Vivian, so I don't really think I've got too much to say. Vincent being one people are mentioning. All right, yeah, you could set Vincent to 10, so she'd be an 11-point player. But she's an aristocrat, right? That's where it's going to be really, really important. So I think that's a really nice change. It is set, yes, but you can also use her offensively. Let's not forget, like, let's say your opponent plays, I don't know, like Joachim into a sergeant and then boosts it a few times, or they play a safecracker off Justice and it's like 13 points. You could play Vivian, set it to 5 power, right? So you can use it in a few ways. Mainly, you're probably going to want to have targets on your own side of the board. Really funny on Arnulf. That's a really nice point. Yeah, 0 provision card, Arnulf, as it is a token. So Vivian on Arnulf is a solid, 15-point play. That's no joke. Arnulf probably not going to be that popular, admittedly, but still. Really nice change to Vivian down the line. Yeah, really, really cool to see. And yeah, you could use it on Emir. And it's an aristocrat, right? So aristocrats are just going to be way more useful now, and that tag is worth a lot more. A safecracker is still worth it. We'll get onto that in just a second, but yes, they are, definitely. Combat Engineer is now a soldier. Power change from 3 to 4. What the flipping heck? Something to do with artifacts, right? It's like a random artifact card. If you control an artifact, boost self by 3. This has gone from 3 to 4, so it's actually just a 7 for 4 now. Wow. I mean, there's obviously not that many artifacts that you'd want to be using in Nilfgaard. There's Masquerade Ball. I can't think of too many others that you would want to use. Oh, there's the location. All right. Cadaverine obviously got reworked. And there's the other locations, right? There's some more neutral locations as well. All right, Combat Engineer. Sign me up. So if we just take a quick look, this seems like a good time to look at the neutral locations, just to see if there's any synergies we can spot. Land of 1,000 Fables. It's like somewhat memey, but, you know, it could be fun. Armory. You can give armor. That also, you know, looking at the Skellige decks that we were looking at could be decent. I think they're the only two that are mentioned here. Armory, Land of 1,000 Fables. Alright though, yeah. It's a cool card design in fairness, and giving it this extra point is absolutely fine because it's still not going to see play. You're not just going to be like, oh, I've got this 7 for 4 card. It's an auto include because, yeah, it's a little bit awkward, right? To include artifacts, you're going to have to build your deck around. It's going to be very deck specific. So I think having 7 for 4s in specific decks is fine. Oh, I see a big change here. Oh, God, I'm excited for that one. Holy moly. We'll get onto this one in a second. Tucson Knight Errant. I have no idea what this card is. Knight. Oh, leaking my bad. Knight Errant. What is this card? This one, and it's... Oh, God. And it's changing. The Knight Errant is changing from 2 to 3. I'd say that's a pretty big change, you know. Like, this card's honestly not that bad. So 3 power, again, bear in mind all these changes to like 4 provision cards is another buff to Redea decks, right? And she's already got all the love from artifacts. So this is now 3 power and you can deal 4. So it's another 7 for 4, and this is a lot less conditional. Wow, this is a really good card now. I could see this being in a lot of Nilfgaard decks actually. Now, something that's probably important to remember with this card is the synergy that it has with Coup as well, right? Like, if your opponent has a 6 power card, you can use Knight Errant on it, right? As a 7-point play, right? As a 7-point play for 4 provisions that sets up Coup. I think this card's good. I think this card's pretty good. Like, is it going to be in every Nilfgaard deck? No, probably not. But I think it's good. 7/4 can never be bad. And it's not like the combat engineer, right? You look at combat engineer, and combat engineer is like a conditional 7/4. This is a pretty unconditional 7/4. How many decks do you play against that don't have a 6 power card the whole game, right? Or even the whole round? Like, you just don't, right? There's no decks. Apart from like unitless stuff, but yeah. And that's actually a really big change. Could be wrong. But like the coup synergy there, like coup is such a good card. I've been having a lot of success in coup this season without playing a lot of spies. So having like a way of setting up, like already I'm thinking about the double Maddox deck I've been playing this season, where I often use imprisonment as a leader charge to set up this coup. But yeah, like imagine your opponent plays usurper, right? And then you hit them with this, and you're just threatening this coup on usurper. Or your opponent plays Brathans, and you hit their Brathans with it, and then you can coup their Brathans. It's pretty dangerous, right? It's pretty dangerous. I think the coup synergy is the most important thing with this card. But it's also just 7 points. Like, coup is just such a busted card. If you can line it up on your opponent's gold card that's also an engine, like a Brathans, it's just a ridiculous amount of points, right? If you can set up your own engine while shutting down your opponent's engine for so much point swing, like playing a gold engine yourself, it's actually just crazy how good coup is. And it's a flipping echo, right? And it procs assimilate. I think this card's really good. Like, this is the kind of card that would incentivize me to try and play like a mid-rangey Nilfgaard deck without double Maddox. Because I think that's what it struggled with before, having good enough full provision cards. But looking at this card, like I could see it. I can see it. Like just a mid-rangey Nilfgaard deck. It's going to be a shoehorn in Redea decks if they're a thing. And bear in mind, like Nilfgaard has Asir, right, where you can play Shoop and Redea a couple of times. Yeah, big change, I think. Rico, this is an exciting change. I love Rico. Like, Rico against Vi is just unbelievably funny. It's, of course, a dual faction card because it's also in Syndicate. And quite importantly, it also has the Blind Eye tag. So it's completely irrelevant for Nilfgaard, but for Syndicate, a lot of the times it's quite difficult to find this Blind Eye tag or this Firesworn tag if you want to play Siggy 9. Like, a lot of people, myself included, have been playing Siggy at 8 profit this season because Siggy's just such a good card with all the crimes he has. Intimidate. It's a great way of filling your bank up quickly, which can just be great when you've got Philippa and Drill, of course. But Rico is a card that I've thought quite a lot about because he changed last patch or 2 patches ago to not just be base power but actually boosting. So if your opponent plays Gord, right, you can then just play Rico and it's going to play for the same amount of points as Gord. However, there was an issue. He had to be in your hand for this. So if you play a Neuromancy, Rico would just be 1 strength. You couldn't go a Neuromancy for Rico. The only way you could fix this was, let's say your opponent played like a 10-point card and Rico was in your hand and then you passed. You could then mulligan Rico and then you could Neuromancy into him at 10 points, which isn't obviously, why would you mulligan him? But now the fact he's changing in your deck, that is unbelievably cool. Like, it's such a big change. I think Rico is really good now. Like, I think if you're playing a Neuromancy and you're like have a few provisions spare, this card is so worth considering. Like, you think how good Gord is, you just know if you have last say that this can just play for Gord's value as well, right? Imagine your opponent's playing Vi. Yep, you've got a Vi for yourself for 6 provisions, right? The biggest Vi they play, Rico's going to do that. So I think this is a massive change. I think this card is a card I really, really like. I will be playing this for sure in some Syndicate decks next season. In Nilfgaard decks, maybe it's more difficult to justify. But for 6 provisions, you can't really go wrong if you've got an Neuromancy in particular, right? Okay, I love these changes for Nilfgaard. Some nice good 4 provision cards, and this Rico change is probably my favorite actually. Like just a card I really, really love. Yeah, cool. Syndicate Back Alley Chemist. Oh boy. So Back Alley Chemist is the self-poison card, right? Let's just take a quick gander at it for the unaware people. Back Alley. Nope. Let's just try Chemist. Nope. Let's not try Chemist. This search bar has been very glitchy for like a month now. Backhanded Chemist, so it was just on deploy giving poison. And it's actually a card that like you could justify playing, to be completely honest, if you're going all in poison, self-poison. And of course, why would you do that though with how good Line Pockets has been? But they have got a lot of buffs recently. And now that Syndicate Line Pockets has caught some nerfs, maybe there's actually some room for experimentation with like self-poison archetypes, off the books being an example. So it's now got a Zeal and an Order. So it works exactly the same. If you want to use it as a deploy, you can just still use it that turn. But you can now play it proactively. Really nice change on this one. Like it. It's just a buff to the card that's honestly pretty decent anyway. Like the maths checks out on that card. Horse and Ewok got changed. Salamander Mage got Mage. We talked about these last time. Roland, tooltip now correctly specifies that a unit needs to gain poison in order to gain coins. Okay, so not sure exactly what that means. I guess it means if a card's got Veil, it doesn't gain coins, but I assume that was already the case. Cleaver now has 0 armor. Big change. So this means the red ships in Skellige are going to kill Cleaver. He'll still play the Shakedown, but it won't proc his Intimidate, right? So it will kill him. So you would need a target. So basically, Syndicate is going to be almost forced to play double Payday in their decks now. And Horson Jr., there's actually a big change as well, because Devotion Syndicate just got a lot better as his Devotion ability went from having this weird random insanity that was never relevant to now it just doesn't need to be a boost enemy. You can just deal 6 damage, for example, to kill a ship. So I think Devotion Syndicate could be the way to go next season. Maybe in tournament settings we might see more non-devotion with Heatwave, but I would say that Devotion Syndicate with Bank seems like the way to go. You get Mutants Maker as well in at 4 provisions, which is a nice devotion card, while also giving you a double tag for that Siggy, the Mutants Maker, just being a really good card, 7 for 4. It's proactive as well in devotion. You probably just include one of them for the Firesworn Salamander tag. That would mean you don't need to bother with a blind eye. Most of the other tags just find their way into the deck. But yeah, this is some big change here, and especially with the change that Cleaver's got, meaning that he's so susceptible to these ships, I would say that Devotion Lined Pockets just seems like the way to go, because Bank is still a great card, right? It's just like before, there was kind of no reason not to run an Neuromancy, because like you can find a Spender when you need it, you can find the Justice, the Safecracker when you need it, you can find the Drill when you need it. However, now there is actually a reason to play Devotion, right? Like there's big Devotion payoff with this horse, and before there just really wasn't. You'd maybe get your Jacques to get a Veil in round 3, but who cares, right? Because you don't play any Firesworn cards. Safecracker we talked about, removed Intimidate, power change from 3 to 4. Somebody asked me just briefly, is this a big deal? Yeah, of course, it's a massive nerf, but the card's still amazing. Line Pockets decks are still going to be great, in my opinion. Like, the 4 provision crime cards that exist, such as Shakedown, Fist Tech, Dip, are just incredibly well statted on their own, let alone considering Gourd, Intimidate, Synergy, and the fact that you get +1 on them with Line Pockets just turns them into absolutely unbelievable cards. And also, Line Pockets as a leader ability is just completely outrageous. Combined with Bounty and Drill, you just have like ridiculous amount of removal with Drill, right? Of course, you guys know how good Drill is. Drill has Safecracker Synergy. Safecracker Synergy means Crown Splitters. Crown Splitters means Cleaver and means Justice. Means Line Pockets. The deck's going to be the same. It's probably going to play Devotion. I still think it's going to be incredibly competitive. Maybe there's some room for other Syndicate decks to experiment, but I still think Line Pockets will be the best way to go. Big change next. These are new ones. Damnation. Provisions have been changed from 8 to 7. Let's go. That's a really nice change. Damnation is a crime card, and there's not many good crime cards above like 5 provisions, really. Like, as soon as you get to 5 provision crime cards, they are looking very, very dodgy indeed. Like, you've got loads of really good 4s now, such as like Shakedown, Swindle. Like, all these are just amazing with a couple of exceptions. In at 5, you've got Paydays, which are fantastic. In at 6, Exco is fantastic in Firesworn decks. Pickpocket is very meh. Tavern Ball is great. And you look at Damnation, it's like, it's kind of meh. Diaz Array is good in very specific decks. Collusion the same, and you've got Justice. But Damnation being 7 provisions is really interesting. That is really nice in a Firesworn deck now. You're able to spawn 3 Zealots with it. But honestly, the stats on this card kind of just check out a little bit more now. If you've got ways of setting up the Death Blow, this could be a really nice card. And at 7 provisions, it is a big buff. Is it going to see play in line pockets decks? Probably not. But I could definitely see it being included in more of like a congregate lineup. But also, it's now more of a consideration. Yeah, exactly. Imagine it against AQ, right? Like, the card is just a lot more reasonable. It's also just got, in my opinion, one of the most impressive premiums that is just kind of underappreciated. I remember just being really blown away by this premium when I saw it. I think it's a really cool one. So, love this change. Greater Brothers, armor change from 4 to 5. Okay, nice little armor buff to Greater Brothers. A card I really love with Vladimir, one of my first Syndicate decks I ever experimented with. So that's a nice change. Greater Brothers is a pretty good card. And the armor buff definitely helps. Professor, damage change from 3 to 4. That's a pretty big change too. A point buff, but it's actually more than a point buff, right? Because Professor gives the card bounty too. So dealing 4 damage is really, really relevant. That's a big buff. Suddenly, like, if you've got a 4, like, I mean, just think how much better 4 damage is than 3. Like, your opponent plays a Hunter, right? A Brockville Hunter, and then you can just go Professor, open it up, and then suddenly you've just played a 14-point card. That's an incredible buff for Professor, and one that was needed. The card isn't that bad, but that's a massive, massive, massive buff. Holy moly. Yeah, it's probably easy to overlook how good that is. Yeah, I could see this card seeing play in Syndicate line pockets for sure. Obviously, Drill sees play there, but like, yeah, 4 removal is just so much better, right? And Professor has still seen some play in some decks. Wow, that's a massive change. I love it. Massive fan of this change. Very, very cool. Pirate's Cove got changed. We talked about that. Boris, power change from 3 to 5. That's a huge change. 2 points. He needed it. Boris. Only Gwent Boy plays Boris, I believe. So he's now 5, deal 3. Death Blow, deal 3 coins. I mean, 2 points is a big deal, right? So he gains 6 points if we say 1 coin is worth 1 point, and often it's worth more. He's got a 5 body. That's like 11 points for 8, but probably more like close to 12, right? Yeah, it seems pretty good, no? Seems really good, actually. Yeah, cool change. Helvide, power change from 5 to 6. Oof. More buffs for Firesworn. Firesworn looks like it's getting a lot of love here. And it could definitely be an interesting way to go. We've seen how good Araka Swarm is, because in a vacuum, these decks that go wide, if there's no wide punish decks in the meta, it's very difficult to target. I think it's great to have more Swarm decks around. When it's just AQ kind of stands alone in a vacuum, and it's very difficult to consider putting Lacerate or Lambert in your deck. But if there's a couple of popular Swarm decks going around, suddenly they become worse as a result, because there's more of them. So I think it's great to see, because Swarm is just so powerful if your opponent doesn't have the answers. Great to see this getting some change. Keeper of the Flame, we saw this one. Again, quite difficult to look at, I think, in a vacuum, because it has Cleric synergy. How many clerics are you actually going to want to play in your deck? I mean, honestly, a lot of these are pretty decent. Apart from Prophet, Lebioda, and Nathaniel, like, what are these 2 cards still? Just kind of forgotten about, unfortunately. Would love to see the NR boys getting some love. Prophet obviously did get buffed a little bit, but it's still just unplayable. Eternal Priest is a pretty good card. The Inquisitor, it's not terrible. Cleric's good, of the Flaming Rose. The Scribe is pretty good in Igor decks and very specific decks, right? Like, this card is actually really good, I think. So Keeper of the Flames now having some Cleric synergy and boosting all units on the row. Yeah, looks like it could be a cool card for sure. It's another Swarm payoff, right? Okay, yeah, that's all the new changes basically. Sacred Flame finally got Firesworn category. That's good to see. It's actually an extra point on this card in round 3, right? If you've got Jacques down on the board, so it is actually really relevant. It's needed this for a long time. That's good to see. New journey character. Triss and Tilly, a powerful mage and talented seer. Cool. Rewards, cool. Contracts, cool. Story, cool. I'm not a massive Journey fan. I mean, I buy it every time, but like the quests and stuff like that, and the story and the images, I tend to gloss over if I'm honest. New starter decks, cool. Visual improvements. For using orders of premium stratagems, adding new visual effects for Tiger's Eye, Basilisk Venom, and Engineering Solution. Ooh, looking forward to trying out Engineering Solution. Game fixes. Story art is now showing correctly on mobile devices. Game boards are now correctly. Oh, Dandelion Vainglory is now able to target Saber-Tooth Tiger Stealth. That's really cool. Pitfall Trap will now correctly trigger when the opponent plays a trap. Okay, that seemed like it should have worked before. But it's been fixed. Cool. I just thought it was meant to be, but that makes sense. Sigaruvin is will no longer count the unique gangs from its original deck when played by opponent through Cantarella. Okay, so if you Cantarella Siggy, it will give you like the minimum profit. The Adrenaline Effect will now work correctly for good. Oh my god, he's fixed. No changes to Triss Butterfly. A little bit surprised, but yeah, there's the patch notes, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments. It was still a bit of a gloss over. Obviously, again, we did the 40-minute video on a lot of these changes. Just like generally speaking, big fat W for me. Well done, Gwent team. Give yourselves a pat on the back. Look, do I wish there was a couple more Northern Realms changes? Of course I do, because I'm biased. But well done, CDPR. Looks like you smashed it out of the park on this one. I love the neutral changes, the stratagem changes. I'm looking forward to trying out some armor stuff. I love the monster changes with vampires getting a bit of a buff at the high end, some Death Wish buffs, and also like this weather push. I think is really bloody cool. Love to see a lot of the leader abilities getting pushed. Love to see Discard getting pushed. Do I wish Iced just got reworked so that every deck that Skellige plays isn't just Blaze of Glory, Devotion, Warriors? Absolutely I do. This is my biggest dislike of this patch, 100%. I absolutely hate SK Warriors. It's super boring to play. It's super boring to play against. It's super boring to watch. Is it good? Is it fine as a deck? Absolutely, it's fine. Whatever. But I just feel like it's there's just way too much devotion payoff in SK at the moment. Skjordel's just such a good card. So is Herald. So is Iced. You can only really play Iced in Blaze of Glory, which basically just means to me you should just play Blaze of Glory SK. Am I going to try other stuff? Of course I will. Look, I've never played Iced. I think I played one game with Iced maybe, and I played against Traps and lost. So yeah, I never played it again. That was only like a week ago as well. But yeah, really looking forward to trying out Pirates. Really looking forward to trying out non-devotion kind of SK. Like I do think non-devotion SK is really not bad. With cards like Geralt Quen having some fantastic synergy with the Quartermaster changes. Now Vesemir looking like he could be an option. Obviously you've got Arnagad as well. As Vesemir with the armor up change. Yeah, love the changes to SK. Again, my biggest gripe is I just wish that SK Devotion Warriors was pushed back a little bit. Obviously, they got that random Morkvarg change, which, you know, sure, it's something. But I think it's unfortunately SK is the biggest faction that is just Devotion has just overtaken it, right? And it will continue to do so as long as this card Iced exists. It will always just be Blaze of Glory, Devotion, Warriors, in my opinion. I'd love to be proven wrong. I would love to be proven wrong, but I think as good as these like pirate decks and as good as these neutral non-devotion decks that I love playing, yeah, I've made my point, right? NR changes, absolutely love Pincer Maneuver change. Absolutely love this Fold Test change. I think Fold Test is one to look out for. You can be sure my first decks will be with Northern Realms. Queen Meave change, love it as well. She's still very high risk, but she's now just super high reward. Love this. And with poor infantry being back in the game, there's more swarm payoff for Northern Realms. The Arbalest change, I think, is probably a wise decision. The more I think about it, not to put it to 4 provisions. It could just be a bit of an auto-include card. And it's a nice change for sure. Siege Tower change, a Point Sam NR card in at 5p. If you compare it to Curse Knight, it's now 2 points more than Curse Knight. By the way, can Curse Knight be 4 provisions, please, and just a power less? Oh, I would love that. Give me Curse Knight at 4p, please, CDPR. Please, 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 please. Give me like a tech card at 4p. Curse Knight has always been a card I've looked at as being a 4 provision ability, like a squirrel, right? Like a fortune teller. It's like a tech card, right? It doesn't have any direct synergies, but you can just include it in your deck. It's very difficult to justify including a tech card in at 5 provisions. That's going to be bad in a lot of matchups, right? Like you look at Maxi is an exception because it's like your own deck, whereas Curse Knight is normally relying on your opponent's deck, right? It doesn't really have any synergies on of its own. So yeah, like I would like to see tech cards more like 4p Curse Knight. It used to be 6p, right? It's now 5p. I would love to see 5 power 4p. I think that would be a card that you could probably include as a one-off in a lot of NR decks. And it would be, yeah, it would be a help, mate. Honestly, like we have no flipping offensive purifier, so at least we could have a cheap, a cheap sort of purifier that you can't use offensively and has its downsides, right? Yeah, I digress. It's a nice change to Siege Tower. Inspired Zeal getting changed is huge. Look out for this deck next season. I think it'll be, again, one of the first decks a lot of the Gwent YouTubers will flock to. Mr. Freddy Babes, I'm looking at you. My prediction, guys, Freddy is going to be uploading this day 1 of the patch, I reckon. That's a Freddy deck if ever I've seen one. Yeah, I think this deck's going to be good, for sure. Invigorate change is great. Oak change is great. The stratagems is wicked. Monroe is fine. It's now better against Unicorn. Seems good to me. Riot Vanguard change. Yeah, sure. I don't think it's going to be very relevant, but it's a nice change. I think this is a pretty big change. The Catwitcher Adept. I can see this card seeing a lot of play. Yeah, it's very similar to the Enchantress with a higher ceiling, right? If you've got lots of cards that you're happy to stack. One thing, I wonder if it has synergy with traps. If it's just units or not. Oh, cat trap isn't going to find it. It counts traps or not. It's just units, so yeah, okay. I still think this card's pretty good though. Lockdown still irrelevant. Morven probably not very relevant. Imperial Formation getting buffed is nice. I don't think it's going to be super relevant at first. Damien and Stefan buffs are great. Remdi Vigeth buffs are great to soldiers too. Still think they're lacking something. Vivian buffs are really, really good. I like it a lot. I love the Emir change because you can play it with rot tossers now, right? Otherwise, Emir would steal the rot tossers back and then they would go off. You don't want that. Combat Engineer getting buffed is great. I think this is a really big change. The Knight Errant, I think this card looks fantastic with Coup. Rico change I absolutely love. The Back Alley Chemist I love. Being able to play proactive, sure, why not? Horst and Ewald are still probably irrelevant. Roland, just sort of a tooltip. Cleaver change I absolutely love. I think the fact it ties to a ship is fantastically cool. Still an incredibly good card. Still an absolute auto-include in a Line Pockets deck. Same with Safecrackers. I think they've nailed the changes. I also absolutely love the Horson Jr. change. I love the Damnation change. I love the Greater Brothers change. I absolutely love the Professor change. I love the Boris change. I don't love the Pirates Cove change. But yeah, it's kind of cool, I guess. I just maybe think it could have got like a coin each time. How bad would that be? Like if you get an extra coin, I think it'll be fine. Like a lot of the Syndicate decks are very like dependent on their leader, like Tribute, Hidden Cash. This could just be like a mid-rangey one that has a lot of points, right? Like you look at Double Cross for an example, right? Like this could be the Double Cross of Syndicate. Maybe even just give it a couple extra provisions for that reason, right? I think that would be really cool actually. Just give Pirates Cove like the high provision change, right? Where you can just like play no spenders because you've got Double Jackal. You just don't have to play cheap 4 provision cards. You can just put bare gold cards in, play Collusion. Yeah, I would like it. Still think it's a little bit far off, but I do actually like the fact you get a second Jackal as a change. I still just think it probably, I don't really see why they didn't just give it like an extra provision or an extra coin or so. Because I think it's just can be irrelevant as it is. Boris getting 2 powers, great. Helvetia getting the powers change. Keeper of the Flame getting some cleric synergy is cool. Tiger's Eye getting buffed is a little bit scary. I think this one is going to be really bloody good, but fortunately I still think Line Pockets will be the way to go. So we won't see too much of it. So yeah, basically, as chat has said, what do I think of the changes? As a score out of 10, I'm going to give them a 9.5. They would have got a 10 if there was a couple more Northern Realms changes. In fact, okay, I'm going to give them a 9 because I don't like the ice change. That's it. But I hope to be proven wrong. I just think ice restricts deck building too much, and I hate ice. I think he's so boring. Like every matchup against ice the same. win round 1 or probably lose the game. Go into round 2, mulligan all your good cards, bleed out the iced, go into round 3, down a card, and rely on just drawing your gold cards. And then if you don't draw your gold cards and you mulliganed away, you lose anyway. Oh, the gameplay's so boring. I hate it. So, yeah. And bear in mind, this actually was very relevant at the most recent Gwent Open. If you watch back the Payable versus Gravesh series, I was casting it at the time, doing the community cast. I had a few drinks. We were just chilling. But, oh my god, it was the worst series of Gwent I've ever watched. And I think a big part of it was cards like Ice and Masquerade Ball, because what Gravesh had to do in a lot of these matchups was he went into round 2 having to mulligan his cards. Either he was getting bled and he would mulligan his iced, or he was the bleeder and he was mulliganing all his good cards. And then what ends up happening is you just either draw your cards for round 3, like you draw your Masquerade Ball, you draw your iced, or you don't. So everything about Iced and Masquerade Ball, I hate. They're just too good. Even if you made Ice 15 provisions, he would probably still see play. Because he's just a bloody good card, right? But yeah, not only do I think the card is too strong, too boring, a big part of my reasoning for hating this card is the fact that like all signs in the Skellige deck builder point to Iced, Blaze of Glory, Devotion, SK Warriors. And that's not just Ice, that's Scoia'tael and Herald as well. And even the Clans card, the 6P card, whatever it's called. Can't remember what it's called. War of Clans. Yeah, that's my take. Overall, I give these patch notes a solid 9 out of 10. I deduct 0.75 from the ice change, and I deduct 0.25 for a little bit. I wanted a little bit more love for NR. That's it. Great job, CDP. I think this is the best patch notes we've seen in a long time. And even though I was a little bit upset that there wasn't as many changes last month, bruv, guys, I forgive you. I think you did well. Congrats. They probably don't care what I think, but still, we should praise them, right? Like, all these changes are banging. This is exactly what the game needs. And now we're just 1 month away from constant content. I'm very excited for the future of Gwent. Now, CDPR, if anybody's watching, what we now need from you is, we need arena mode, draft mode, to get some love. Because there's no mention of draft mode in this patch notes, right? And you said you would. I understand, though. I want you to focus on constructed first, and you're doing well. But we need that draft mode. Draft mode got a patch? Wait. It has its own patch notes. CDPR. Great job. Well, I guess I'm going to do a separate video for draft patch notes. Make sure you look out for that one. Bye, guys.